Hi there. I made a short video yesterday about anxiety and how it often leads to unhelpful coping mechanisms, because when you are struggling with anxiety or social anxiety and maybe all of the other forms, um, what happens is you find it very difficult to cope in everyday situations. So you turn to those unhelpful coping mechanisms because you got to get through your daily life and you got to live in society. We can't just all go and lock ourselves away. And so this evening I wanted to just mention a few things from my studies and my first-hand experience, what's going on when we do experience anxiety. First of all, I want to say, and a reason why it's often not picked up by for a child, say, or a teenager, this severe anxiety that I'm talking about often isn't picked up because anxiety, like I said, doesn't always present itself as anxiety. It could present itself in a person's behavior as anger, as going within themselves, becoming very quiet, as I said, turning to unhelpful coping mechanisms, which may make a person aggressive, or, everybody people present the symptoms of anxiety in very different ways. So remember, all those symptoms of a person's behavior, they're symptomatic of a deeper rooted cause. So it's very important to look deeper at if a person is, I'm generalizing, but smoking too much or drinking too much, say, for sure, or turning to other unhelpful coping mechanisms. There's a reason behind that, and that is literally starting off anyway with that problem. It's literally a person's way of coping, and they may be crying out for somebody to look out for them or look them in the eye and say, "How are you doing?" Because in many cases those people feel very isolated and cannot articulate how they are feeling, and often don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. So that's one thing. Another thing I would like to say is this is often not picked up when children are younger and teens, because others around you don't always pick up on what's going on within you. I know for me growing up, and when I struggled with this anxiety, you always think it's so visible to everybody else. But in actual fact, mostly people are so absorbed and consumed in their own being that they don't even notice what's going on with you. And that way it can go undetected. I do think these days we're much more in tune with each other and with ourselves. However, it still could go undetected. And I know when you're experiencing anxiety, the symptoms are so strong and so severe that you think the whole world can see. And of course, this makes it worse, because as this arises in you, and we can talk about the symptoms, as I said, and in my course online, it can start with a racing heartbeat, butterflies or nausea in your tummy, tight, tense muscles, perspiration, shaking, trembling, blurred vision, can't hear properly, your ears are ringing, knobbling knees, shaking. It can go from very mild to very, very extreme. But the problem here is, if you're not taught how to deal and cope with this, we all automatically, when something like this happens, you try and suppress it and make it stop. But of course, this just makes it worse. And the thing is, then you don't know what to do about it. You just want to run, and you can't hide it because the symptoms just keep getting worse. So that's when you don't have the skills and the tools to manage it and know how to manage and overcome it, which of course I will teach you in one of my courses or workshops if you join me. And the second problem with this is we can become very avoidant of future situations, because now we know that, oh my gosh, my mind and my body are going to react in this completely unhelpful way and absolutely hijack my whole being. So you're going to become avoidant of those situations in future. And this is a very, very vicious cycle because one feeds into the other. You dread having these symptoms because firstly, it's so unpleasant, and then you're afraid of this happening in other situations, so you become avoidant of the situations. You feel more isolated, you dread this happening, and the more your mind gets used to this being your automatic response to situations which may not even be detrimental or fearful, your mind, that becomes your default pathway in your mind, which is what happened to me. So it became an automatic behavior, which was happening then in situations that weren't even stressful or fearful or shouldn't have caused anxiety. And that's what happens because what you practice grows stronger. And your mind then gets used to that reaction, so it behaves in that way. And of course, when your body behaves in this way, your mind automatically thinks this is a stressful situation and now I'm going to try and suppress it, so it just gets worse and worse. It's a vicious cycle. So that's why it's so important to learn the tools and techniques that you can manage. Now, everybody does experience anxiety and stress, and even for those people who don't have it to a debilitating degree, it's very useful to learn the techniques because we all come across through life situations that cause some form of anxiety and stress, which means we don't perform or work or communicate to our optimum levels. So it's really good for everybody to learn these techniques anyway. And some of the things that happen, well, what happens, to put it simply, in your brain is, not to get too technical, but your brain tells you what comes first, the body or the brain. Well, your body often picks up on the emotions first, which tells your brain, oh my goodness, I'm experiencing this really stressful and anxious situation. So what happens is your limbic brain, your emotional brain, floods the rest of your brain with these stress hormones. And what that happens is, if you can imagine a glitter jar, and you shake that glitter jar, you can't see through the glass anymore. It's fogged up with all this glitter, or a snowball. So you can't, that's like your prefrontal cortex, your logical thinking brain at the front. You can't think straight and you can't perform from a place of clarity and calm because your mind is now flooded with stress hormones. And so that would be cortisol, adrenaline, and some other stress hormones. So what happens is you have to calm down those hormones before you can think with clarity and calm and speak from in a rational state, and maybe put on your best performance if you're giving a talk, sitting an exam, going for an interview. All of these events, if you can learn to manage your stress and your anxiety, you will behave, you will speak and communicate and perform to your optimum. So that's why it is very, very beneficial, first of all, to know what's going on. There's a physical response going on in your brain, and it affects your body. It affects your ability to be able to behave and act from a place again of clarity and calm. So it's really important, first of all, to know what's going on and to know that there is actually something you can do about it. And by trying to suppress and stop this response is not going to help. It's just going to exacerbate it and make it worse. So in the next day or so, I will teach you a few techniques that can help manage this response rather than try and suppress it. Because as I said, when you try and suppress these emotions and not know what to do with them to help you, you are just going to make the situation worse. You can imagine if you're going for an interview and suddenly you have this panic attack which comes out of nowhere and you don't know what to do with it, and now I'm sure we can all recall a time that we can't actually even think straight. So how can you speak and behave from a place of clarity, you know? And so what happens then is, what about when so maybe you mess up that interview. Okay, we all mess up the odd interview, but what about the next time you have an interview? You know what's going to happen? Your brain is going to remember, oh my God, no, I can't do that. Now what happened last time, I'm now afraid it's going to happen again. So you find yourself going for that interview, and now you're so worried that this stress and anxiety response is going to happen again, which makes it more likely to happen again. So you can see how the vicious cycle continues, that you can continue to hijack yourself. And again, it can be so unnecessary, because by learning the techniques, the mindfulness techniques, and I'm sure there are endless techniques out there and things that can help, but I'm just speaking from what I have studied, what I have learned, and from my own experience, which has worked exceptionally well for me. I can teach you some of those techniques in the next few days, which can help you from getting caught up in that vicious cycle of anxiety hijacking you and stopping you from living your life to the fullest, and so from living your best possible life, and from hijacking any future meetings, presentations, talks, social encounters that you could otherwise dread. So maybe I'll see you in the next few days, and I can share some techniques with you that have worked for me and that I have studied. I'll do that tomorrow. Take care and have a lovely evening. Bye.